Down the bitch gang. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Buck said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to Five on the Floor. I'm your host, Greg Sylvander. Today's floor plan with me, Alex Toledo. Follow him at Tropical Blanket, and Brady Hawk. Follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Ethan has the night off. We're going to recap the Miami Heat's preseason finale against the Houston Rockets. They did lose 110-104, but we know that the exhibition games, the records don't matter. So we're going to go into who left an imprint on this final day to make an impression, to try to make the roster. We saw some interesting stuff. Houston is an interesting team. So the floor plan is we'll unpack the final Miami Heat preseason game before we look ahead to the regular season, and final cuts are made by Saturday. Saturday, the 21st, I think, is all final roster cuts. So we're right there. Before we dive into all of that, I want to tell you about a great sponsor here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network, the official sponsor of our post-game shows. That is Aggressive Insurance. You know insurancebyLynette.com, an insurance broker agency servicing South Florida for over 15 years, offering auto, homeowners, condo, life insurance, retirement programs, free notary service to all clients, representing the leading insurance carriers throughout South Florida. So if you have a bad driving record, no problem. This is an agency that will work for you. Call 954-581-8800 for a free phone quote. You need to check them out. Insurance. They can even help you out with life insurance, business liability, retirement programs. So it's a one-stop shop. InsurancebyLynette.com, 954-581-8800. And we usually do in the post-game shows, and the segments are coming. I promise that we're going to kick off the regular season in regular season form, but here for the preseason, the segments aren't mapped out, but we are going to be doing an aggressive segment as well as a Rocky Sports segment. And I'm just going to start here, y'all. The Rockets are going to be fun. I'm going to watch them. That's a league pass team that I have now acquired after tonight. Amen Thompson is unbelievable. He's the 4th pick in the draft, came off the bench. And if there's anything related to the aggressive play or player of the night, shout out to insurancebyLynette.com. It goes to Amen Thompson. He was great. I thought also Alfaroon Sengun, Jalen Green, Van Vliet, Alex, they got an interesting team. We watched it on playback. Before we dive into the Heat, because that's what everyone else wants to hear, because they were impressive in certain ways, thoughts on Houston, thoughts on Amen Thompson to start?
Yeah, like you said, they're real fun. They're going to be a league pass team for sure. The story with them over the summer was, them kind of adding a bunch of veterans with Jeff Green and Dylan Brooks and Van Vliet, and obviously getting Udoka as their coach. And so they're trying to be competitive. They don't own their own pick this year. And on top of that, they have a ton of insane young talent. And, with what they added this summer with Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore, along with Jalen Green, they've got 3 of the most athletic dudes in the league. So they're going to be an immediate, like that bench unit with Thompson and Whitmore. I mean, you saw it with that almost poster of the year in preseason, right?
Yeah.
Like they've got some insane athleticism, and Amen is just also a high IQ player and playmaker. He's going to be a good defender. The shot has already looked better in the preseason than, kind of coming into the league. And the Thompson twins in general are like basketball junkies. So that combined with their athleticism, I think both of those guys are going to be great in the league. And Whitmore being there as well, like them getting him at 20 was great value. So yeah, I think the Rockets are going to be like a fun 30-ish, 35 win team at best. And but it's going to be like one that's going to be fun to monitor over the coming years because they've got a lot of young talent there.
Agree. And this is more, I'm relating this because I think that as we watched Miami's young players, a couple of which are fighting for their NBA lives or their their spots, their two-way spots, their final roster spots. I would say, I guess, roster spots. I don't know that the two. I think all the two-way guys understand where they're at. Jamal Cain didn't play. He was a late scratch with an illness, Brady. But from the rest of this team, we saw the starters kick off this game, essentially. Caleb made his debut. We saw a little bit from each guy. Bam was aggressive early, and then it really became more about all the rest of the guys. Just from the initial pop of the starters that we did see, minus Jimmy Butler, obviously, but we did get to see what we expect to be the starting lineup with Caleb in there instead of Jimmy, and then Caleb getting his minutes. What did you take from the regulars before we dive in to some of the more hopeful players on the roster?
Yeah, I think the main one is just how good and comfortable Bam looks in general, just in that same range we always talk about in the short jumper. It just looked very fluid. It looks very smooth. I think we saw a lot of that jump last season. And now it's just about like flattening out a lot of the stuff that we saw along the way. It's about like kind of pushing that along in a way, we've been talking about Tyler becoming more efficient, but what if Bam becomes more efficient with the short jumper? What if that stuff begins to come along? Because he starts the game 4-4, a lot of those type of shots. That changes things, obviously. And the other thing that kind of popped to me, and I don't really know, because there's obviously this topic about the point guard, but once again, we still have not seen Spo make a decision with both Josh and Kyle playing. Like the 5 preseason games, we've learned nothing. And then obviously Kyle's been playing more, so he's been starting more. But it's funny watching their offense in these games, even with Kyle. Like every single possession to start that first quarter was through Bam in the mid post. Every single play was the same exact thing where it's like they're not running stuff through a point guard, even with Kyle out there. It's like they're prepping, knowing their roster, saying, we're just going to play through this either way. Part of that is because also they're just letting Bam get those reps over and over and over again. It's not their total offense. Another part of it is Jimmy not playing is obviously a big part of things. Like if you're not having that element of usage and pick and roll play and his mid post stuff and his off ball stuff, you're going to have to kind of spread the ball around a little bit. But I just thought that was interesting. The magnitude and the level of usage he's getting in the mid post in terms of playmaking and then turning into jumpers and doing all that stuff, that part was interesting. We didn't see a lot from Caleb. I mean, if there was a player where we're saying we know what he is and we don't really need to see much, it's probably Caleb Martin. That's a guy that you could plug into so many different roles. We talked about the 4. We talked about playing for Jimmy tonight. He could play in the guard spot. First possession of the game, by the way, for Miami, offensive possession. Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry are playing. Caleb Martin brings the ball down the floor. And I just wanted to say, I feel like we didn't give enough credit to the fact that he's going to be handling a lot this year too. We kind of mentioned Josh and these other guys, and it's I think back to the playoffs as well. It's not like he's going to be running stuff as a point guard, but he's a guy that can just get the ball into their initial action and then just go and move out the way and kind of play off things as a screener, as a slip guy. So I think that's going to be an interesting aspect. And then obviously Tyler, I thought, did certain things that was good. Good deep pull-ups. He had a good pick and roll play early in the game where he kind of had a little stutter and got to the rim and froze the drop defender. He still has these moments, but obviously we didn't see a lot from them. It's more so about the young guys, and I'm sure we're going to get to that now.
Bam and Tyler in 31 minutes, 11 free throws. That's music to my ears. More of that in that limited amount of time. That tells me that they're aggressive. I like that. I know that Houston is probably not going to be one of the best defensive teams, but they are athletic. And they were trying hard. I'll give them that. It may be a different era for Houston Rockets basketball that way. But you hit on it in that we kind of know what we're getting from all these guys. And to your point about Caleb, his ass was bringing up the ball almost every possession in some of those late games against Boston. So if he can do that against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, you're damn right he can do it on a Tuesday or even to be more specific, on a Wednesday in November or in October next week to start against Detroit. The rest of the guys that we want to talk about, and I'm purposefully avoiding this player, but we're diving into him now because of how I think he probably was the most impactful player that was out there. You know where I'm going. It's the Rock Esports Gamer of the Night. You got to head over to Miami's first gaming lounge, Rock Esports Center, to eat, drink, and play all day. Host your next birthday party, gaming party, located at 15305 South Dixie Highway in Palo Bay, 5,500 square feet, state-of-the-art center equipped with the high-end power of industry titans Corsair and Origin PC. Play all day. Passes are available for $25. Professional level gaming at the most affordable prices in town. Use the code 5RSN for $5 off your first purchase over $20. And we got a 2K tournament coming up. And a watch party. So you got to make sure to get in on that. Follow Alex Toledo. He will be plugging it as much as possible. And the Rock Esports Gamer of the Night, I'm telegraphing this pass because, I mean, there are a couple other guys that did show some things, but RJ Hampton is the guy. If you ever wanted to see a player who is fighting for his life in the NBA and going out there and making an impact tonight, it was RJ Hampton. He was efficient, distributed the ball, was really aggressive to the point where he was just fouling, even some loose ball stuff that was funny, but he really showed up, Alex. We were awed by him on playback as a point guard that kind of, as it was reported, I think Anthony Chang wrote about it, basically said, like, I don't care what other offers are out there. I'm betting on going into Miami's system and figuring that out there. I think he's going to earn a spot. I think what he did tonight probably cements that for him. RJ Hampton looked good. He's a player at a position of need. What did you like most that you saw from RJ tonight against the Houston Rockets?
Just, I guess to put it in a broad term, the relentlessness, because he just kept coming and coming, and just the whole time it was like, you know, the thing is, he was really honest with us when he talked with us at Media Day, and I thought it was one of our better interviews because he's a funny guy too. He was really honest about, like, excuse me, what he needs to do to carve out a role in the league after all the stuff that's happened with him. You know, what is he, 22 years old, has already played for 3 other teams before coming to the Heat, as somebody who was highly touted coming out of high school and all that. And he was talking about defense. And then that's all you heard about coming out of training camp from Spo was how much RJ Hampton impressed with his defense and the deflections and the steals. I saw it tonight on the defensive end. I thought, like, he was really a hound on there. And then on the offensive end, it was just so many, like, exactly what you wanted to see, right? Because he hit 2 of 3 from 3, right? There was kind of some questions about his shot, even though, you know, we had talked about it. His 3-point percentage the past couple of seasons, on which are mostly assisted, it's 35, which is not bad. But you know, he hit the shot tonight. He had, 5 assists to 1 turnover, and I thought he looked really good just with the first step and getting to the rim and kind of being slithery. Like, I thought that's where he stood out on the offensive side of the floor. Is he kind of played off of that, just being able to get by guys, break down the defense, you know, get into the paint, and then make the play from there. And I'm not saying he's ready for, like, a backup point guard role in the regular season, but I definitely do think this is the game that cemented his two-way spot. I think he's going to stick around. And, you know, he told us that on the pod as well, that he was just kind of hanging around Miami the whole summer, way before knowing that they were going to give him a spot. Like, I'm sure that there was some sort of, like, he knew something that they were going that there was some interest, but, you know, he was here just hooping and, you know, signed pretty late and is now playing again for his NBA career as a two-way guy. And you're seeing that out there from him.
RJ Hampton, he outplayed Drew Smith, and I know Heat fans are loudly upset by Drew Smith. Brady, should we make a ton of this one game? How do you absorb the fact that, like, Drew Smith was out there as well and obviously didn't shoot as well, still distributed the ball, but I mean, I think fans have they've pivoted to RJ Hampton. If they didn't already, they definitely did so tonight. How do you think that? Do you think that there's room for both of those guys? I have a feeling that there might be. I want to also, you know, get into some of the other players that we saw tonight. So whoever else jumped off the page for you, I'm interested to hear. But just this whole, I think some, particularly those who know how the coaching staff works and have been around the team, kind of expect Drew Smith to make the team in some capacity as a two-way player because they've stuck with him so much. He's been mentioned as a guy that they've stuck with. Spo sounds like he wants to trust him. But then you see RJ Hampton's potential tonight. Do you think that that is a competition, or do you think that there's room for both of those guys as we close on cut day tomorrow?
I do think there's room for both. And not only just because they have a third two-way now, but they have one true point guard on the roster, where it's like, it's kind of the reason for the two ways in the first place, that you can kind of have a revolving door of a certain position. So it makes sense to do it. I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear that. They probably also don't want to hear the fact that I did think at certain points in this game, I thought Drew Smith defended really well. Like, I thought he positionally like moves his feet really well, and he could just kind of get underneath guys. But offensively, there's just such a talent gap when you're talking about and looking at what RJ Hampton was able to do. That's kind of been the big thing. It's like, also you're able to have both of them because they're absolutely like complete opposites. Like, not just like they both can defend, but offensively, it's like there was the one guy that's like higher floor, does not do anything flashy, but can kind of just get the job done. And then there's the guy that has a whole lot of talent, higher ceiling. But I think the reason why I think this game was important, and number one, it's really messed up that he wasn't able to play this whole preseason, because I feel like we'd be talking about it totally differently if he was able to kind of play game over game. It's messed up that he only got this kind of one game show out. But the way he was playing in this game in terms of his control, because one of his knocks has been like, in comparison to Drew Smith, is like RJ's kind of all over the place. Like, he could be turnover prone, maybe he's not a true point guard. He can't be that type of under control guy. I thought he looked pretty under control tonight. Like, some of the passes he was making were pretty precise. His pick and roll play was like really calm. He was not rushed whatsoever. And then obviously the shot looked good, as Alex was pointing out. He has obviously the natural tools and athleticism and all that type of stuff. So I think we knew that he had this scoring ability in him just because he was such a highly talented player coming out of high school and stuff. But being under control like that and having those like point guard skills, I remember you brought up media day, Alex, about kind of that interview. And I remember I was asking about like his ball handling and point guard stuff specifically and how he reads it, because it felt like he was always such a tweener. Like, he was not a one, but he also was not a two. Like, he's not a two guard. He's not a guy that's just playing off the catch constantly either. So he's in this weird tweener position that it feels like he's leaning way more to a one than a two to me. And this team needs way more than they need a one more than they need a two as well. So I thought that made big strides for him. I do think they can have room for both. I will say in the other part of his game, I mentioned Drew Smith, but I thought RJ Hampton looked really good defensively as well. The way he can get around screens and stuff, he could probably hold his own. It sounds weird, but he could probably hold his own against like switches at times just because of the length he has. Like, he feels like he has that type of ability to kind of at least get a certain contest up. And then you asked about some other guys. Justin Champagnie is an interesting one, because I feel like he's had moments throughout this whole preseason where he's been pretty steady as well. Like, you're asking for a certain something of somebody that could go out there and just do what he does. That's what Champagnie does. Like, he can get to the rim whenever he feels like it seems. Like, he can burst by guys. He has good finishing. The question will be, I think he's a guy that will probably stick around in Sioux Falls. Maybe he can bump up eventually. I don't know if he's really competing for that two-way, with the fact that we're talking about all these other guys, and obviously Cole Swider we didn't even mention yet, who got some late run as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it. But 100%, I think that they definitely have room for more than one point guard with the stuff that we saw tonight.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing. I think Heat fans want to hear that. I think that you're right that Champagnie he'll stick around the program, but there's limited spots. Swider, who we didn't really talk about much tonight, I think was clearly ahead of him in this rotation. Another guy, Thomas Bryant, appears to have separated himself from Orlando Robinson in a pretty big way, at least to start. We'll see how long that remains. Orlando Robinson he's not guaranteed unless he's on, or I guess another big portion of his contract is guaranteed if he's on the roster by opening night. So I think he still ultimately will get there. We didn't talk about Niko Jovic yet, though, Alex. He had 10 points, had some up and down moments with fouls and turnovers, but he's a young player that we're continuing to watch. I think Heat fans are coming to grips with Jaquez maybe a little bit more ready. And granted, we're using very small sample sizes here to create this theater, but let's close the episode. Jovic, and then your parting thoughts on everyone else that came off the bench tonight.
So, similar to last game, I feel like I'd like what I'm seeing from Jovic, but I want to see more. And that's kind of where it always ends up with him. It's like I'm seeing the flashes, I'm seeing the utility, how he can be used potentially with the Heat, but I just wish we were able to see more. Like I the thing is the most encouraging part about all this is the stuff that we saw in summer league and over the summer in the World Cup, with his body and the way that he is able to get to the rim easier now. I think that stuff is really translatable and just makes me feel better about him in general. Because he looks very comfortable with the ball in his hands, and he moves very well with it. It's very natural at just kind of like attacking a closeout and making the next play, maybe dumping it down to the big. Like he's very natural with all that and looks, like the shot has room for improvement, but I believe that it'll get there eventually. But that's kind of the thing right now. Like you said, I think Haka is like, when you see him, it's like, okay, no, this guy is ready right now. Put him on the floor right now. But Jovic is like, I want to see him on the floor, but it's not necessarily as much of a need as when I see Hawkins. And that may be dumb because it's been so little of a sample. But, it's kind of what happens when you get a guy who's, a 22-year-old senior who was running offense for a big program. And no, I'm not the college basketball guy, but just from what I've seen so far, Hawkins has stood out more to me. And I want to see Jovic get more playing time this season because I just want to see him incorporated with some of their better players, because that's what I think kind of like Haka I feel is more ready to be an attacker off the bench, where I feel like Jovic can kind of be somebody who can be a connector for some of their better players immediately. Because I don't think his mindset is to get the ball and be the guy who's running the floor. I think he's always about making the next play, and I think that fits in well with some of their better players. Like that's why I think he kind of looked, he looked good when he played with Jimmy and Bam that one time in the preseason last year. And, the times he's gotten to show it, it's like those skills are translatable for him. So I just like to see it with some of their rotation guys. And as far as the other guys, like I agree with Brady. I do think there is room for both RJ and Drew. And I haven't been necessarily high on Drew either, but I also agree that like the baseline has been there for him on defenses as a pretty good one. Like I think that's really where he's made his name a little bit for the Heat, is like he's just always there on the defensive end, doesn't really make mistakes there. And I think that was kind of the reputation for him on offense, but I don't really think that to be the case. Like I don't think he's a no mistakes type of guy. Like he definitely makes some mistakes, doesn't always take the greatest shots, but I do think he's pretty steady in general. And I do think he's going to be the one who sticks around there, along with Hampton and Swider, and with King getting the guaranteed spot. I also, did like what I saw from Champagne. Just like it really seems like he's a strong finisher in the paint. I liked his defense, and it would be cool if they kept him around too.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because they technically have a spot. So there's a part of this that's a little, when we're haggling over who to keep, Brady, it's kind of like, why can't we keep all of them? But it looks like they're going to only probably keep 14 standard contracts and then the 3 two-ways. I didn't let you get in on Jovic earlier. Definitely want to get your thoughts there because he was probably the, highest touted prospect coming off the bench that the Heat fans are keeping tabs on. What did you see from him before we close out here?
Yeah, I thought it was funny because I remember after the first quarter, I was like, you didn't even really notice him out there. And he was like in a lineup where it was like, I felt like he should have had the ball. And I was like, it was a little weird. He comes out in the second quarter and he was attacking a lot more. And he was kind of getting off catch and goes, kind of driving downhill and all this stuff. And it was interesting because when Alex was just talking about maybe him being a connector next to the main guys, my only counter to that when I was to watch this game was the fact that I really believe like Jovic needs to have the ball in his hands to be effective. Like, I think when you're watching him out there, it's hard for me to see a role for him when like he was in that lineup and he's just playing spot up and he's just standing around and occasionally just kind of swinging the ball, or he'll maybe shoot it, maybe drive a kick. Like, it just feels like when we're talking about always his unique skill set, it feels like you're boxing him in. Whereas when he has the ball in his hands and maybe you allow him to kind of play make a little more and do stuff on the move, because I don't think that's the hardest thing to do when guarding him is when he starts going downhill. That's why he's so good in transition. Once he gets rolling downhill, he's tough to stop. And I think you saw that in the second quarter a little bit, but that's why I question, I guess, his role in general with the regular rotation is you can't really like put the ball in his hands like a ton when you have Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, and Bam Adebayo on the floor. Now all of a sudden he's playing more of a spot up role. Now you're relying on him to hit a ton of threes and kind of space the floor in that way. And I don't really know if you're asking him to do that at this current moment. Like I think the other stuff he's not. And I don't think he's comfortable in it yet, to be honest. Like I see when he gets the ball off the rim and he goes coast to coast, he looks comfortable and confident.
Yeah.
When he gets the ball,
now when it's 5 out.
When it's 5 out, that's when he gets the ball and he catches and goes to the basket. He looks confident. He looks like comfortable in his own ability. When he catches and he shoots it, like it's like he almost like doubts himself in a way. Like he's kind of like reluctant to pull it because it feels like as well. You see like certain guys like Tyler specifically, and you see this in warmups. Like when a guy like has the same shot every time, like even if he misses, the shot looks the same. It's probably misses the same way every time. Like everything is so exact. Jovic's shots are kind of all over the place where it feels like there's still like a little bit of discomfort there. So I feel like just in terms, I'm curious to see what his role is going to be. And I remember we talked about this last year. Like what is Spo going to do in terms of simplifying his role? Like, and we've seen him do this all the time. They'll probably end up figuring it out. But I am still curious to see how they do that because Alex said the word, you see flashes, and that's what you see all the time. But it's always when he has like, starts getting in this mode where he has the ball in his hands for a few plays and he has higher usage and all this stuff. So that's going to be a thing to monitor. And in comparison to Hawkes, yeah, he needed the ball in his hands, but like I could still see a role where he doesn't. And it's not even because of the shooting, like because he doesn't. It's kind of similar. Like the shooting isn't that amazing, but I see other things with the slashing and sliding baseline and doing all this other stuff where it just feels a little just totally different players in different roles. But I am curious to see what Spo does with that because with the injuries we're seeing and everything, Jovic is going to have to play eventually. Yep. Like, and he's going to have to find a role off the bench. And
you beat me to it.
The move is to slow roll them both off the bench and just develop them that way throughout the regular season, I think.
And that's why you need Kyle next to him. You need Kyle next to them both.
You see the vision.
This is unbelievable. We've arrived at this place. So I'll close by saying this. One, they're going to need Jovic to show more than he's shown so far, I'd say, because Haywood Highsmith, at minimum, he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. He's not going to play in 2 weeks. Reevaluated is what was said. Josh, I think, will be back. But that throws a wrinkle in because I think Spoelstra was kind of counting on being able to count on Haywood Highsmith, and now that lever is not there. So it'll be interesting, to your point, how to monitor the way that they use Jovic. I know that he's not used like Haywood Highsmith is, but they're going to have to eat into some minutes. So I think that that's something to watch. We'll see who gets the final spots here. That'll be an interesting thing. We'll keep you plugged in on Off the Floor as well as on shows the rest of the weekend. Shout out to Rock Esports and Aggressive Insurance.
Make sure to sign up for that 2K tournament, by the way. You can do it on the Rock Esports website. And the watch party is coming up on the 27th versus the Celtics. So come out to the Rock Esports Center. Come and have a good time with us. The watch party is free. Watch Heat Celtics with us. And if you're interested in losing to me and or Brady Hawk in 2K, come register for the tournament, man. It's going to be a good time.
Definitely check that out. We will have you covered for the regular season opener against Detroit. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Regional Sports Network.